the hearts of our members and will speak of Labour values to the people out there.
Okay, thank you. Now, as you can imagine, I'm under big pressure from the contenders who all want to keep talking, but I also want to bring in as many members of the public audience as I can. Yeah, you can answer the question. The man at the very back there.
I think part of the identity crisis with the leadership battle is becoming apparent here. I'd like to see whoever takes over the mantle of the Labour Party really find a true identity for the Labour Party and where it's going. Everybody's squabbling over the middle ground. The Lib Dems and the Tories did so at the election, and that's probably why Labour lost. You need to find somewhere new to take the party.
And who do you favour then of these five?
Well, it's supposed to be a secret ballot, so maybe I shouldn't answer that. But for what it's worth, I'd say Ed Boggs.
Right. And just to answer the question to the previous gentleman.
Having had that.
Look, on the living wage, I think we all support the living wage. I was the only cabinet minister who actually introduced the living wage for all the civil servants in my department, and we've actually got to be choosing a
by London citizens to do so, Mr. Balls.
It's true, and I heard you, and I did it. I was a cabinet minister who actually introduced it, and that's a good thing. And what do people want at the moment? The biggest issue in our country is what's happening to the economy and jobs and public services. And I've gone out and said there is an alternative, a very different alternative to the cuts which we're seeing now, which I think are dangerous and risky and destabilising. And we've got to get this debate onto policy and the future rather than this backward-looking introspection, which is the route to long opposition, in my view.
And we'll come to that. You, sir. The man in the second row there, yes.
The panellists all say the words New Labour like it was an ideology. It was a brand name, and it's just, I think it's a shame that you're all treating it like it was an ideology that was something completely new. It was just a slightly more to the left version of what the Tories did for 18 years. And the only panellists who are coming anywhere near close to sort of making a completely brand new and interesting and exciting ideology for the party to follow are Diane and Ed.
Can I just say, I have always taken New Labour to be a brand. I have never said it's an ideology because it wasn't.
And which Ed?
Ed Balls.
Oh, right, okay. Sorry about that. They both wanted to know.
We didn't know.
I go to the man there in the blue. Yes, this is interesting. Go on. And then I come back up there. Yes.
Yes, surely the biggest problem facing everyone on the panel is how to reassure the public that all the backbiting and the scandal that was revealed in Mandelson's diaries and Tony Blair's memoirs won't happen again.
Let's deal with that. Right. We must move beyond that era. I'm the only one on the panel, I think you can say, I was equally loyal to Tony Blair and Gordon Brown.
David Miliband.
I said in the first week of this campaign that the Blair-Brown era was over, and that's why I focused my campaign on how we change not just policy, but change politics as well. One of the best things about this process is we are actually having an election. And at the end of this process, every single member of the Labour Party is going to unite behind whoever is elected. Because we know that political parties that are divided don't deserve to win. But there's something else for the man from London Citizens that I want to pick up. Because it's not just about how we pay for a living wage. I've said we should pay for a living wage out of the bonus pots that exist in private sector and public sector. But there's something else here about politicians who become out of touch. One of the things I said on the first week of this campaign as well is I would train 1,000 community organisers around the country to pioneer a different kind of Labour politics. And so all over Britain now, there are people organising to help the homeless in Manchester, spread to 7 cities via Facebook. There are people taking on private house builders who haven't fulfilled their responsibilities.
I know you've been on the road. I know you've been on the road a long time. You've said this often. No, wait a minute. The question actually was about, and was a very important question, the record shows that when you were in government, the country was treated to an astonishing display of backbiting. And this is all, and people do not like that.
I'd agree with that.
I would say
and you started answering, and then you went off to give your policy.
99% of the people in the government were working their guts out for the success of the Labour Party.
All right.
The failure to have an election was a significant part of the problem. But I also believe that the ability to unite different strands of the party is absolutely key to success. The successes we had in the 1990s were because we drew from all the different parts of the party. And that's why I've run my campaign as I would run the leadership, uniting those different strands.
I just want to say to the gentleman, you're absolutely right. And now, I actually think the Peter Mandelson book obscured many of the achievements of New Labour, but you're absolutely right that the divisions were a massive problem for us. And I'm very clear about this. If I become the leader of this party, absolute unity. As far as I'm concerned, the past is another country. You use all the talents from across the party. And, I've got everyone from Frank Dobson to Frank Field supporting my campaign, which is a pretty broad spectrum. But I'm determined, if I become the leader, to use everyone on this panel and indeed all the talent we have in our party. And that's the right thing to do. And forget about all the Blairites, all the Brownlights, all of that stuff.
Will you have Ed Balls as your Shadow Chancellor?
I'm certainly not getting into any of that. Let's concentrate on trying to win the leadership election first.
Look, talking about uniting people, I made a speech saying let's have an alternative on the economy. Just wasn't just Dennis Skinner and Alistair Darling. Ken Livingstone and Boris Johnson both said these cuts are dangerous. And if you want to have somebody who can really unite left and right,
we can all claim
that's the way to do it.
I'm going to take another question from the audience on an important thing, but do keep the questions coming, because that's fine, and if the panel don't mind not all answering every question that's put up, that's fine too, because otherwise we'll be here till midnight or beyond. But if you want to have your say from home and want to follow us, we're on Twitter at BBC Question Time. You can text us, 83981, CFIPS page 155, shows you what others are saying. And if you're watching digitally, push the red button, you can do the same, or of course you can email us. I'd like to take a question from Kate Malinar, please.
Given the relationship between Labour and the unions, will the proposed strikes simply further damage the public's already tainted view of the party?
Diane Abbott.
The first thing to bear in mind is how savage the Tory Lib Dem cuts are going to be. We're talking about millions of jobs being lost, not just in the public sector, but also in the private sector. There's over 1 million people in this country that have jobs in the private sector dependent on government contracts. And then there's the demand you take out of the economy. These are the worst cuts that we've seen for a generation. So, of course, ordinary union members are angry. It's not just terms and conditions, it's people's lives. In my constituency, the majority of people work in the public sector. Many of those are women, many of them are heads of households, and many others are working to pay bills. So of course people are frightened and angry.
And what role would you like to see the trade unions play? And do you think, as the question put, that if they behave in too extreme a way, it will damage Labour's chances?
I think we have to move away from this caricature of extremist trade union leaders leading blind members into strikes. People are genuinely worried, and I was at TUC on Monday. Trade unions want to be tactical about
So Bob Crow is your man?
Bob Crow is not loved in London, but he's also not amongst the big four trade union leaders. We're actually talking about the TUC, we're talking about the GMB, Unison, and what I'm saying is this: the trade union leaders that I spoke to at the TUC on Monday, they want to be tactical. They want to end this artificial distinction between the public and trade unionists. They want to use the law when necessary. But yes, if people who are frightened for their jobs ballot and want to take lawful action, then I certainly on this panel will stand with them.
And civil disobedience is part of that.
It won't be the first option, because this is not some boys' game. This is not macho posturing. This is people's lives.
David Miliband, you've said you won't take part in this demonstration.
Bob Crow is not my man, but he's not affiliated, his union is not affiliated to the Labour Party.
David Miliband, I must be able to ask you a question before you sort of go off. You've said you won't take part in the demonstrations.
No, I haven't said that. I haven't said that.
Do you stand for the foursquare with the TUC?
I will march the length and breadth of the country if it stops the cuts and gets the Tories out. And I'm very, very happy to do this. But what I know from my own constituency, which is next door to Jarrow, the Jarrow March of 1936 marched the length and breadth of the country. And it was a heroic and great thing. But when they got to London, the Prime Minister, Stanley Baldwin, wouldn't even meet them. They need political allies leading the most imaginative, the most fearless, the most economically credible way of defeating the cuts, but also developing a sensible economic strategy for the future.
Civil disobedience?
No, not look. I mean, civil disobedience helped get India independence, and Bob Crow is not Mahatma Gandhi. I mean, let's not get into the civil disobedience.
What about a general strike?
No, that's not what the unions are talking about. We have got what Brendan Barber, the head of the TUC, said is that he wants a coalition with the public. And that is a very, very sensible thing to say, because what he understands is that, yes, home helps are very worried about their future, but so are small business people. There are business people in this audience who know that consumer confidence has gone through the floor since the George Osborne's budget, that also business confidence has gone through the floor. And there is complete unity on this panel. Ed has given speeches about it with devastating critique of what the Tories are doing. Economic masochism which is what the strategy of the government, is dangerous for our economy as well as divisive for our society, and we all have to take it on.
Ed Miliband.
Well, to Kate, who asked